Welcome to the Sacred Womb podcast, womb-centered wisdom for the arc of womanhood, with me, your host, Melanie Swan. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. And today I am talking about 9 ways that unresolved attachment trauma affects how we hold space. So this phrase, holding space, it was bugging me quite a few years ago. And so it's just so immensely popular in the therapeutic, healing, coaching, wellness, women's circle arena. But I was curious about what was really happening, both within me, within colleagues. How did different facilitation styles affect people in the groups, in one-to-one? And so I've been investigating this over the last few years, with everyone I've worked with who does this. And it turns out that there's lots of stuff that is trauma-driven behind it. So I say this with a massive dose of compassion and understanding for myself and all those working in the healing arts, because everyone who's working in this arena has a trauma history. So just trauma being like disconnection from self, there being a response to that, there being a series of events or attachment, but ways of connecting with people that just are hard, and they're not based on love, they're based more on fear. And that sets our attachment template, and that sets our relationship with ourselves and how we relate to the world, really, and others. So it's been really a rich experience to explore this. And so I wanted to share all my findings with you so that if you want to investigate it too, you can. And just a big other caveat for this is that there is no healed point. We're all moving towards embodying more love and coming into connection with the world with more love and presence. But there's no like tick box point where we're like, okay, now we're doing our facilitating from a place of love, or we were doing it from fear last week. It's just an increasing amount of love and a decreasing amount of pain driving it, and adaptions and kind of myths and illusions, really. So as we go, we kind of dissolve that and come more into our bodies. So I'm going to talk through what trauma space holding looks and feels like. I've got 9 kind of key ways. They're not completely definitive. They're just some of the main ways that I've seen and experienced, and I'm going to explain. If you're not doing all of them, good. If you're doing one of them, it's something to look at. If you're doing all of them, it's something to look at if you wish. So then I'm going to talk about what's driving trauma-based space holding, and what it feels like to be on the receiving end of trauma-driven space holding, and what we can do if we are doing that. You know, how can we move to more awareness, more presence, more love-based? And of course, this is the Sacred Womb podcast, so I'm just going to talk about how this affects our menstrual cycle as well. So it is all relevant. Okay, so let's begin then. Here's 9 ways that unresolved attachment trauma affects how we hold space. So firstly, I don't really like this phrase, holding space. I don't think it's accurate. And I think it conjures up a certain way of being. I would prefer the word facilitating, and that's what I use, or being present with. But yeah, facilitating feels like a much better word for me and fits. Holding automatically has us thinking that there is something to be done, and it creates an automatic like bit of tension somehow. And that's not really what we're aiming for, because we're aiming for relaxed, yet engaged and present from a base of love. Well, that's what I'm aiming for anyway. And holding space, I don't know. I think it's become one of those things that is used as a bit of a persona. I'm a space holder. I do this. And honestly, it just bugs me. And so I've been investigating it for quite some time. Anyhow, let's get into it because, I don't want to rant on. Okay, so here are 9 things of how it looks and feels. So if you're holding space from a place of attachment trauma, I'll explain it all after, but just these are some of the markers. So if you have a sense of like holding in your body, a sense of like tension, if there is like an activation when you work with someone or with a group of people that's like, now I have to be a certain way, that's a good indicator. We don't have to be a certain way. What's really needed is that we are ourselves. Sure, we're in a particular, I wouldn't even say role, because we don't want it to be a persona. We want it to be an integrated part of us. So, yeah, hopefully that makes sense enough to just run this through your body. And if you have a sense of holding that takes you away from your own experience, then that's an indicator that there's some attachment trauma there. At work, next one is that you perpetually push your own needs to one side to take care of others. This is attachment trauma 101, and it is, if you're doing it unconsciously, then you have my full empathy. If you're doing it consciously and thinking that that is going to get you seen, heard, or respected in a certain way, or just have a certain status, then that is for sure trauma-driven. It's from a place of lack. Please, 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 if you're putting your needs to one side consciously, please note that it causes havoc in relationships. And being on the receiving end of that does not feel good at all. So if you are aware that you're pushing your own needs to one side to take care of others, please don't do that. That's not a good idea. Just do everything you can to integrate your own needs again and come from more of a place of wholeness, because that is what people are actually wanting who we're working with. And we really don't want to be self-sacrificing. It's the martyr wound. I mean, it's common and we all need to look at it. And I've processed a bunch of stuff around it. And, I've worked with people that have as well. So it's serving no one. And I really mean no one. The illusion is that it's serving others, but it truly is not. So hopefully I've got my point across there. We need everybody. If we are to progress, and we are progressing our collective consciousness, we need everyone to be their true selves. That's what we're aiming for in healing work, to have all of ourselves present, integrated, able to access a whole range of being. You may be thinking that this is a good idea and it gets you what you want, but ultimately it really causes havoc in our own system if we push our needs aside and in our relationships. So yeah, that's a big one. But yeah, often with a sense of self-sacrifice, pushing our needs to one side, there is an expectation, albeit mostly unconscious, that we're expecting others to see us in a certain light. We're expecting love in response, or safety in response, or adoration, or something, and don't get it. Then we feel resentful. Resentment is actually when we've gone against our true self and done something, been a certain way, and then not got what we wanted for it, which we never communicated in the first place. So it's all a bit bundled up, really. So yes, I encourage you to integrate your needs. The next one is viewing others as less than or feeling sorry for them. So that kind of puffs us up and puts us in a slightly power over relationship, and the people we're working with in a power under relationship. Or we just aren't able to see their resources or do our work in a way that really recognizes the intrinsic wisdom and in someone's system and promotes a sense of self-trust, because that is usually what's gotten forgotten, broken, frazzled. So yeah, if we're viewing others as, oh dear, you poor thing, that's not empathy, it's sympathy. And that's really not helpful. So another one to look at if you are feeling like that when you are with your clients. The fifth one is that you're trying to hold the whole group field or person with your own energy. Like with big arms, like I'm holding the whole group. That's a freaking lot to hold. Well, like 20 people's stuff, one person's stuff. It actually infantilizes the people that we're working with if we do that. And it's going to produce two main reactions. Either they're going to give up their agency and be like, oh, yeah, look after me. I can't obviously do it. Or teenage parts are going to feel that breach in boundary. And the people we're working with are going to resist us, be that openly or in a more subconscious way, but it produces a reaction and it doesn't feel good. So, yeah, the antidote is just stop holding, relax, be present, be engaged, but don't try and control the other person or the group. That just makes everything a little bit tight. It produces response, as I've said. And no one has a really good time, really. And I just want to add, as I'm saying all these things, these are things that we all need to learn. These are things that most of us do as we start our process of being a healing arts professional. And it's okay if you're doing some of these things. I'm being direct with you so that you know what it is and you know that it doesn't feel good when it lands. It's not going to feel good in your system. But I'm doing it direct so that you can recognize yourself and do something about it if you want, because it's going to drive that progress. And it feels much better when we're not doing these things or we're doing them in a gradually less and less way. And as I said again, are embodying more presence and love. The classic one, number 6, is that we feel perpetually exhausted after holding space. That might be, if it's 1 in 10 times, 1 in 20 times, that could indicate something else that we can just be aware of and investigate. But if it's perpetual, if you're dreading running the group because it's so tiring, the people are so tiring, it actually means that you're doing it in a way that is so tiring and holding. So just something to have a look at, but being perpetually exhausted is a good marker that it's coming from a place of attachment trauma. Okay, next one is we become attached to the outcome of other people's state of being or experience. So this can look like wanting people, like needing people to have a really good time in order that you feel like you've done great work and then are seen again. It feeds into this puffing up persona. And it's so exhausting. And it tightens in the body, it tightens the group field, or it tightens the field between two people. And it actually stops the process because it's an unconscious agenda coming from us. So yeah, have a look at that if you feel like you need people to have a deep experience or feel their pain or leave saying this or that. That's really attachment to the outcome, and we can really draw back our energy and be aware of that. Everyone's on their own journey. We can't control anyone, and each person is going to have the experience they need, really. It might not be what we think they need, but it's going to be what they need. It's what they co-create. So that's up to them. Okay, next one is if we find it difficult to be vulnerable with people, either one-to-one or in groups. And this is one to watch out for, particularly for therapists who work one-to-one. If you're very comfortable working with people one-to-one, but then get in a one-to-one situation in friendships or socially, and you feel like, oh, no, I don't like this, I'm going to protect myself and not reveal much about myself, that's something to look at. Because in the therapy room, that's going to produce a certain dynamic between client and therapist. Obviously, we don't it's the person in therapy's time. So I'm not saying this is all about revealing all our own stuff, but it means if we're guarding ourselves, they're going to feel it. So it stops the flow of energy between to people, or it stops the group energy flowing in a certain way. So again, just something to have a look at. Do you feel comfortable with being more vulnerable or open to a certain extent with people, your friends or groups? And often it's different if we're in groups and one-to-one. So again, just a lovely investigation to have, something to have in progress, so that you have a better time and your clients have a better time and everything flows more freely, really. Next one is, if you can't feel your own body or emotions while space holding, that's an indication that you're operating on attachment trauma. So if we put all our focus on the other person or the other people, and our energy goes outside of our bodies, that is going to have us feeling quite empty and depleted. And we're going to be behaving in certain ways to people. We're going to be overly attached, so to speak. And it's going to have an impact on the whole processing. So really coming back to our bodies and being present in our own bodies, being able to feel our own affect and emotions moving, is just absolutely key, because that's where we can act like a tuning fork for what's happening in the group, for what's happening within us, and be able to facilitate from a more informed, clearer place. Okay, so last one is, you work and work and work, but feel unappreciated for all your efforts. It's not the people we work with job. It's not their job or their role to appreciate our efforts at all. They've got their stuff and they're working through it and we're facilitating. And if there is a sense of appreciation, that is lovely. And if there is a flow between two people, there's just a natural sense of appreciation for the process in the presence. I haven't found a need to be adorned or given praise in certain ways so that I feel good about myself. That's not what we're aiming for, really. It's just a flow of energy, like a fire between people where stuff is moving and we're just becoming more and more present. So yeah, if you experience any of those things, it's totally understandable, because you will have experienced attachment trauma. So I'm going to go into what drives all these things now, and hopefully you're still with me. This is a lot to take in, so if you need to really pace yourself with this and pause and go back to what it looks and feels like, I've written them out as well, then please do that, because it's our way of being in the world. And when we question it, it can feel threatening sometimes. Sometimes it can feel relieving, a whole host of ways. But yeah, just take good care of yourselves as you listen through. So what is driving trauma-based space holding? So as I said, it's usually attachment trauma, and it's kind of people-pleasing, really, if we're overly focused on others' experience and we can't feel ourselves. So people-pleasing is actually parent-pleasing, or, foster parent-pleasing, whoever took care of us. So what happens is we don't feel secure in our parents' presence. We might feel scared and feel the urge to sort of make them, or try and make them, into a version of themselves where we feel safe. This is totally driven by the need to survive, because if we haven't got someone to attach to and take care of us when we're little, we die. So this is the level of charge that's driving all of this. That's why it's totally understandable. It really is. It's just we need to bring awareness to it and then work on it. So that's all we can do. So yeah, we try and make others into a different version of themselves so that we feel safe. And this becomes more of an automatic thing. It becomes a pattern in our nervous system and our being, in our system, like in the parts of us that we adapt in order to feel safer and feel more loved. And we try and control our environment in a way that stops the pain and stops the terror, and we feel okay and safe and loved. And so this is what's really driving trauma-based space holding. The person holding, as it more accurately is called, is a fear that if the other person isn't okay, in our perception, so okay could be one thing for one person and okay could be another thing for another. So if someone is, for example, scared of anger, if a therapist is scared of anger, we're going to try and avoid the person getting angry, either with us or just generally, or processing anger. And it creates a tension that is unspoken. And it's just something that we can look at in order that we can be more integrated ourselves, more present ourselves, so that people we're working with can be more present with us and bring the things that they couldn't feel with their parents, basically. So our whole system becomes oriented around us feeling safe and not feeling these things that kind of feel big and overwhelming and unsafe. And that's going to be different markers for different people. So when we're working, we need to really watch out for this, because we can really use it as a compass for our own healing process. Where am I feeling more tense? Where do I back off? Where can I lean in? And this is just an ongoing thing, as I said, that we can utilize as a compass for our own healing as we progress. So the unfortunate paradox is that as an adult, we hold all this in our bodies and feel unsafe within, and we project it onto the people we work with. So, yeah, I don't know what I can say more about this, really. If we work on our stuff, there's changes. If we don't work on it, it doesn't change. So anyone you're working with, so if you are a healing arts professional, my support for you is here. And if you want to look at this and unravel it and become more of who you are, that is the work I do. There's so many healers out there. So obviously you don't have to work with me. But I just encourage you to really work with it. Most healers do, some don't. So if you are a person who's choosing someone to work with, then one of the main questions you should need to be asking the potential person you're working with is, do you do your own personal work? And what's that look like? And is it an ongoing process? And if they say, well, no, then don't work with them. If they say yes, then that's someone who's in progress, just like you are. And there's going to be some sort of flow in the therapy room. Okay, I think that's that. So yeah, I've actually covered what does it feel like to be on the receiving end of trauma-driven space holders. It feels tense. It doesn't feel good. If there's a sense of attempt to control, there's a sense that only certain parts of self are acceptable. And this is all on the scale again. So if there's a load of trauma-driven stuff driving the space holding, then yeah, it's going to feel like quite tense and weird, and there isn't going to be much flow. The less trauma that's driving it, the more presence and love that's driving it, it's going to feel better if you're working with somebody. So I'd just say trust your body and see how you feel in the presence of a person you're working with. If you're the person facilitating, see how your body feels in the presence of others. Okay, so what can we do about it if space holding is trauma-driven? I mean, I've covered this really in my meanderings, but the solution really is for us to do our deep work, both in one-to-one and in groups, because different stuff gets activated when we work in one-to-one and in groups. So I've found it's really useful personally to do both. And yeah, it's helpful. Our attachment template is formed in the womb. So when we can do that gestational work, that is really helpful. That's usually where the survival terror is. And it's remarkable what we can sense in the womb and how our nervous system develops and how our system, our very being develops. It's all in there when we do that sort of work. So there's quite a few people who do that. If you want to work with me or you want to work with someone I know, you can email me and I can give you some recommendations. That's it, really. I mean, all we can do is be aware and work on it, isn't it, really? But yeah, how does it affect our menstrual cycle? I just wanted to finish on that. So if we're holding and we've got truckloads of pain in our system, then it's stressful. We're constantly stressed and our body's constantly responding to that. Our menstrual cycle is stress sensitive. So if there's a lot of stress in our lives, our priority is not to get pregnant. It really isn't. And so the body system prioritizes being alive. And if we're stressed all the time, that tells the consciousness of our womb as well that it's not a good environment to bring children into. They might not survive. So our menstrual cycle, and our reproductive system doesn't function at its optimum. And so it can be difficult to get pregnant. Or we get pregnant and that baby, that little fetus, is marinating in stress all the time, or most of the time. And then they're born with that attachment template set in place of loads of stress in their system, which stresses the mum or the parents out even more. And it's just a vicious cycle. So if you are holding a lot of attachment trauma and you've got cycle issues, they are related. If you work on the attachment stuff, it's going to help your menstrual cycle. And yeah, I think that's the main thing I want to say about that, really. Okay. All right. I hope this has been useful as always for you. What I'm going to do with each podcast, which I've started now, is record a practice and put it in the digital shop on my Sacred Womb website. So if you go to thesacredwomb.com, the shop in the menu, I'm making them £3 each, so that, I think everyone can afford £3. I wanted to make it a level where it's like a no-brainer. You can just buy it and you can just listen to it and see what happens. So this particular practice that goes with this is on bringing your energy back into your body, which energetically, that's what happens. We go outside of ourselves and try and control our environment. So what this practice does is help you just come into your body more and it's like we get these like octopus talons going out of us to try and contain or manipulate our environment so that we feel safe. And it's about really bringing those in and just really seeing what's happening in our body. When we're more in our body, we can process what is sitting there driving us to go out of it. So there'll be some resourcing, there'll be some grounding, and there'll be some time for processing as well. Okay, that is live in there now. And if you go over to the shop and take a look, then it will be in there. Either way, I hope this podcast helps you on its own and is useful. Please do share it with people. This is very, very common. So yeah, it's helpful if we can get this to as many people as possible. Okie doke. All right. I will see you next time.